Marcus Garvey.
Yeah.
Even today, his name sparks debate.
Yeah.
Some hail him as a visionary leader who ignited Black pride worldwide.
Right.
Others see him as a controversial figure whose ideas ultimately hindered the fight for equality.
Right.
So how do we reconcile these seemingly opposite views?
Yeah.
Well, that's our mission today as we take a deep dive into the life and legacy of Marcus Garvey.
All right. And we've got a fascinating collection of sources to guide us.
Okay.
A real mix of perspectives from both supporters and critics of Garvey.
Right.
Offering us a window into the complexities of this era in Black activism.
It's like stepping back in time to the 1920s.
Yeah.
Right into the heart of the Harlem Renaissance. And listening in on these passionate debates within the Black press about the best path forward for Black liberation.
Exactly. And what's particularly interesting is how these sources reveal the internal divisions within the Black community at that time.
Right.
With varying viewpoints on how to achieve equality and justice.
Okay. So let's rewind the clock to 1917.
Okay.
America is in the midst of the Great Migration, with thousands of Black Americans moving north seeking better opportunities.
Right.
And into this scene steps Marcus Garvey, a charismatic activist from Jamaica.
Right.
But unlike other Black leaders like Booker T. Washington or W.E.B. Du Bois, Garvey isn't advocating for integration or incremental progress in the existing system.
Yeah.
He's calling for something far more radical, complete Black self-reliance, and a globally unified Black nation.
There's a bold vision that resonated deeply with many Black Americans who were tired of waiting for equality and justice.
Right.
That never seemed to come.
Yeah.
Garvey offered a sense of hope and empowerment.
Yeah.
Urging Black people to take control of their own destinies.
One of the sources, an article from the World's Work magazine, describes Garvey's vision for a United States of Africa with a governance structure inspired by, of all things, the Catholic Church.
Wow.
Talk about an unexpected comparison.
It does make you pause, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it speaks to the grand scale of Garvey's vision. Yeah. He wasn't just talking about establishing a physical nation in Africa.
Right.
He was envisioning a global movement.
Right.
That would unite Black people across the diaspora, economically, politically, and culturally.
It was a powerful message, especially for a people who had endured centuries of oppression and injustice. But this vision, while inspiring to some, was deeply unsettling to others.
And understandably so.
Yeah.
The World's Work articles actually identify 3 main groups who were particularly critical of Garvey. First, there were those who championed industrial advancement, much like Booker T. Washington's philosophy. They believed that the path to equality lay in Black Americans proving their economic value within American society through education, hard work, and entrepreneurship. To them, Garvey's talk of a separate nation
was a distraction, if not a dangerous step backward, that could undermine the progress they were striving for.
It's like saying, why fight for a seat at the table when you can build your own table somewhere else?
Exactly.
But then the question becomes, what happens to those who are fighting for equality at the existing table? And can you really just walk away from generations of history and struggle?
Exactly. It was a complex issue with no easy answers. And that leads us to the second group who opposed Garvey. Advocates for Black political power. These individuals and organizations believed that true equality could only be achieved through securing voting rights, fair representation, and equal protection under the law within the existing political system.
To them, Garvey's focus on a separate nation felt like a betrayal, a rejection of their struggle for civil rights.
So you have these two groups, both fighting for Black liberation, but with very different ideas about how to get there. And Garvey is essentially challenging both approaches, arguing that true freedom can only come from complete independence.
And that brings us to the third group who viewed Garvey with suspicion. A group that might surprise you. The Black clergy.
Really?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have expected that. Why were they opposed to Garvey's message?
Well, from what I gather from these articles, many within the black clergy were deeply wary of Garvey's rejection of traditional Christianity, which he often referred to as the white man's religion.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, this is the 1920s, a time when the church served as a cornerstone of black communities, providing not just spiritual guidance, but also social support, education, and even political organization.
So for Garvey to challenge the church was a pretty radical stance, essentially alienating a powerful and influential segment of the black community.
Precisely. It was a bold move. And one that certainly didn't win him any favors among those who held positions of authority within those institutions. But it does speak to the depth and breadth of Garvey's challenge to the status quo. He wasn't afraid to shake things up, even within his own community, in pursuit of his vision.
And perhaps no source captures the intensity of the opposition Garvey faced more vividly than the pages of The Messenger, a socialist magazine known for its sharp commentary and often scathing critiques of the establishment.
And boy, did they let Garvey have it. One article from September 1922, which we'll be delving into further, even calls for his deportation.
Wow.
Labeling him an anarchist and a danger to black Americans.
Wow. Anarchist and a danger to black Americans. Those are pretty strong words. What exactly were they accusing Garvey of?
Well,
it seems like they saw him as a divisive figure, even a threat.
That's certainly the impression you get reading these articles, The Messenger. While advocating for black liberation, championed a different path than Garvey. They saw his message of separatism as ultimately undermining the fight for equality within American society.
So for them, it was about fighting for a place at the table, not building a separate table altogether. And they seem to believe that Garvey's approach would only further divide the black community and make it harder to achieve meaningful progress.
Exactly. And the tone of these Messenger articles, particularly the one from July 1924, titled A Tribute to Caesar, reveals a deep frustration with Garvey's approach. It's a satirical piece, almost mocking, that takes aim at his business acumen, particularly his ventures with the Black Star Line, and even his personal style.
Oh, the Black Star Line. That was Garvey's grand plan. To facilitate the transportation of goods and people of African descent back to Africa.
Exactly.
It was a central part of his vision for black economic self-sufficiency.
Precisely. The Black Star Line was more than just a shipping company in Garvey's eyes. It was a powerful symbol of black self-determination. He envisioned it as the backbone of a global black economy, connecting Africa, the Caribbean, and the Americas. In a network of trade and collaboration, controlled entirely by black people.
That's a pretty ambitious goal for any era, let alone the 1920s. No wonder the Messenger was skeptical. But it's interesting to see how their critique highlights a tension that still exists today. How do you balance the pursuit of economic empowerment within a system that often feels rigged against you with the desire for complete independence from that system?
It's a question with no easy answers. And it gets to the heart of the debate that was raging within the black community at that time. Now, before we delve deeper into the Black Star Line and Garvey's vision for black economic self-reliance, let's switch gears for a moment and talk about another source we have here. One that offers a very different perspective on Garvey. Redbeard's Review.
Redbeard's Review. That name rings a bell, but I can't quite place it. Refresh my memory.
Well, let's just say that Redbeard's Review was a radical publication known for its extreme views, often bordering on racist and nationalistic. They weren't exactly known for their nuanced perspective or tolerance.
So we're talking about a publication with some potentially unsavory viewpoints, to put it mildly. What on earth did they have to say about Marcus Garvey?
Well, surprisingly, they dedicated an entire article to the question, is Marcus Garvey the man? Now, you might think that a publication with such extreme views would have nothing but disdain for a black activist like Garvey.
Yeah.
But the reality is much more complex.
Okay.
The article itself is filled with mystical imagery.
Okay.
Predictions of race wars.
Wow.
And the rise of a messianic figure.
Okay.
Who just might be Marcus Garvey.
Wait a minute. Hold up. Mystical imagery.
Right.
Race wars. Yeah.
A messianic Garvey.
Yeah.
This sounds less like political commentary and more like something you'd find in a fantasy novel.
You're not wrong.
Right.
It's a bizarre piece filled with over-the-top language and wild predictions about the fate of the world.
Right.
But that's what makes it so intriguing.
Okay.
It suggests that despite their extreme views, Redbeard's review saw something in Garvey's message that resonated with their own agenda.
So while Garvey was busy contending with critics within the black community, his message was also finding an audience with groups like Redbeard's review, groups that most would consider to be on the opposite end of the political spectrum.
Yeah.
It really highlights the unpredictable ways in which ideas can travel and be interpreted. Precisely, and it makes you wonder, what was it about Garvey's message that appealed to such a wide range of people, including those with such drastically different worldviews? To understand that, I think we need to delve a bit deeper into the core of Garvey's philosophy.
Okay.
Particularly his emphasis on black self-reliance.
Right, because for Garvey, it wasn't just about establishing a separate nation. It was about fostering a sense of black pride, economic independence, and cultural revival on a global scale.
Right.
It's like you said earlier that yearning for agency and empowerment wasn't confined to any one group or ideology, right?
Exactly. It was a sentiment shared by many who felt marginalized or oppressed, regardless of race, religion, or political affiliation. And Garvey's genius, if you will, was his ability to articulate that yearning in a way that resonated far beyond the traditional boundaries of the civil rights movement.
So while his most vocal critics were often those who were also fighting for black liberation, just through different means, his message also found fertile ground in unexpected places. It makes you realize that history is rarely black and white, isn't it?
It rarely is.
There are always these shades of gray, these unexpected connections and overlapping narratives.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to engage with history in all its complexity. To resist the urge to simplify or categorize too neatly. Because when we do that, we miss out on the richness and nuance, the unexpected connections and contradictions that make history so compelling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now speaking of complexity, let's circle back to the Black Star Line for a moment, as you mentioned earlier. It was a central component of Garvey's vision for black self-reliance, but it ultimately faced numerous challenges.
It did.
And never quite lived up to its lofty goals. What were some of the factors that contributed to its downfall?
Well, for starters, the logistics of running a global shipping line were incredibly complex and costly. Even without the added burden of racial prejudice and discrimination, Garvey and his associates were often met with hostility from port authorities, shipping rivals, and even government officials who saw the Black Star Line as a threat.
It's hard to imagine trying to build a successful business, let alone one with such ambitious goals, in an environment that was actively working against you at every turn.
Exactly. And beyond the external pressures, the Black Star Line also faced internal challenges. Mismanagement, accusations of financial impropriety, and even sabotage from within its own ranks plagued the company.
It's a sad irony, isn't it?
It is.
This grand vision for black economic empowerment ultimately undermined by some of the same issues that have plagued communities for generations. Lack of resources, internal conflicts, and the corrosive effects of systemic racism.
It's a tragic story, no doubt. But even in its failure, the Black Star Line remains a powerful symbol of black ambition, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the possibility of self-determination. It captured the imagination of millions and inspired a generation to dream of a world where black people control their own economic destinies.
A powerful legacy indeed. So as we near the end of our deep dive into the life and legacy of Marcus Garvey, what are some key takeaways you hope our listeners will walk away with today?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that Garvey was a complex and contradictory figure who defies easy categorization.
Right.
He was both a visionary leader who inspired millions with his message of Black pride and self-reliance, and a flawed individual who made mistakes and alienated potential allies.
Right.
But rather than trying to reconcile these contradictions or force them into a neat historical box, we should embrace the messiness, the nuance, the full spectrum of his impact.
Because ultimately, it's those complexities that make him such a fascinating and enduring figure.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
He forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about race, power, and the ongoing struggle for equality. And he reminds us that history is not a static thing set in stone, but a dynamic conversation that continues to unfold and reveal new layers of meaning over time.
Precisely. And as we continue to grapple with issues of racial justice and inequality in our own time, Garvey's legacy, with all its triumphs and failures, offers valuable lessons and insights.
Yeah.
It reminds us that there are many paths to liberation, that progress is rarely linear, and that the fight for equality requires not just grand visions, but also a willingness to engage in the difficult, often messy work of building a more just and equitable world.
So did Marcus Garvey help or hinder the cause of Black liberation?
Right.
That's a question for you to ponder.
That's right.
We've explored his bold vision, the passionate criticisms he faced, and the enduring legacy he left behind.
Right.
Now it's up to you to weigh the evidence.
That's right.
Consider the complexities and draw your own conclusions.
Right.
And that, my friend, is the beauty of a good deep dive.